Hello, I'm Alan Fulton, University of California Irrigation and Water Resources Advisor, working in the northern Sacramento Valley of Tehama, Glenn, Colusa, and Shasta counties. Welcome to the tutorial titled Using Our Weekly Crop ET Reports from a Soils Perspective. In this tutorial, we'll talk about why we consider the soils perspective important. I'll introduce you to a water budget as a tool to help you manage your irrigations and maintain desirable soil moisture levels. We'll talk about a very high-level field scale application of a water budget in this tutorial. So why consider the soils? The soil stores water from the rainy seasons for use during the growing season. It may or it may not be a substantial part of the seasonal crop water demand. Depends on your crop root zone, the soil characteristics, and the amount of rainfall that you receive each year. Soils control how water infiltrates and percolates through the soil profile, which in turn affects soil aeration, crop root health, and our ability to refill a depleted soil with irrigation water. Irrigating according to our ET estimates without consideration of the soils increases the chance of over-irrigation. So I'd like to introduce you to the idea of a water budget as a tool to help you decide when to irrigate and how much water to apply, and to help maintain desirable soil moisture levels. It is an accounting of your water supplied to the crop versus what is consumed by the crop. And it's a budget much like a checkbook budget. Irrigation and rainfall represent deposits, and crop ET represents a debit. These weekly ET reports inform the water demand side of the water budget. By using a water budget to help us determine when to irrigate and how much to apply, we're looking to achieve a balance, not a surplus or an overdraft. In order to achieve this, we need to consider the soils in the crop root zone and its water holding capacity. A water budget is a method of estimating and tracking soil moisture depletion over the season. And again, working to not oversupply so that the soils are too wet, trying to avoid undersupply so that the soils get too dry, and striking that balance where it's the best chance for our crops to grow competitively and sustainably for many years. Why use a water budget? If you're new to incorporating science-based information into irrigation management, using a water budget is a good place to begin. It's an inexpensive on-farm irrigation management approach. We provide you these estimates of crop ET each week at no cost. You keep track of your applied irrigation, dates and amounts, and make the comparison. So the cost for you is really just getting down your own personal method of conducting the water budget, and then making time and giving it priority to actually do it each week. A water budget is a way to estimate and anticipate soil moisture conditions and irrigation needs. In many ways, it's a way to plan ahead and anticipate what you need to do with your irrigation management one week to the next. A budget lends itself to tracking and reporting irrigation practices to help you to establish baseline conditions, and so that you can watch whether things are trending in the long run favorably or unfavorably. And it offers a field-wide picture of irrigation management. So I want to spend just a little bit of time on this idea of a field-wide picture of irrigation management. And what we're talking about is, with a water budget, we kind of average and integrate the soil variability to some extent, or it challenges us to find ways to deal with it. This is a map, a snippet from a soil survey showing about 1,000 acres of irrigated land. And it shows the soil contours with those yellow lines on the map. And each of the different abbreviations, like this AVA and the CZM and others, are abbreviations for different soil series with distinctly different soil characteristics. It's this soil variability that we're trying to manage the best we can to produce the most uniform crops that we can from one year to the next. Most of the soil survey work was done back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and much of the land since those surveys have been tilled with deep tillage, particularly since the expansion of orchards. And so there has been interest in developing more current soil variability maps, as well as developing maps that have GPS positioning so you can relocate yourself precisely on the land. There are different techniques for doing this. One is called a Veris implement, another is called EM38. These are non-intrusive implements that are towed through the orchards, roughly in 60-foot transects spaced 60 feet apart, and up and down the full length of the orchard. What these implements do is use electrical conductivity current or a magnetic field that generates the current and injects current into the soil. And the heavier the soil, the deeper the soil, higher the water content, the more it conducts the electricity. So it can distinguish a deep soil with high water holding capacity from a soil that is coarse, containing sands and gravels, and of lower water holding capacity. This map shows the alluvial nature of our farmlands. You can see this connectivity between the blue all the way across through the lands. This blue color represents coarse soils, high in sand content and high in gravel, particularly in the subsoils. The deep red, kind of rust and orange colors represent silty soils that are deeper, tending to have silt loam 4 or 5 feet deep, and they are of the highest water holding capacity. The green and the yellow colors are transitional soils between the heavy silt loams and the coarser, gravelly, sandy loam soils. So this Veris map shows us that we essentially have 3 distinctly different soil conditions that we're going to be trying to manage with our irrigation. We often turn to soil moisture sensors as a way of monitoring and estimating our soil moisture depletion, and they are perfectly fine to use. We have soil moisture tension sensors on the left, volumetric soil moisture sensors on the right. The primary challenge with these sensors is getting them placed in good representative areas, representative of the root zone, both spatially and depth-wise, as well as the wetting pattern for your irrigation system. One of the challenges with most soil moisture sensors is they only monitor the soil moisture in a relatively small volume of soil. In the case of these soil water tension sensors, it only detects the soil moisture that is transported between the soil and the sensor at the interface between the soil and the sensor. In the case of the volumetric soil water sensor, it is sending out an electrical current or a sound wave, and it penetrates the soil about 1 inch away from the sensor and then returns the signal back. In either case, we are monitoring a very small volume of soil as an indicator of the soil moisture conditions in our orchards. So the idea with a water budget is that we can estimate soil moisture depletion with a ET-based water budget with the bigger picture in mind of the whole orchard and use it to help verify that we're getting good representation of soil moisture sensors. To carry this thought a little bit further, As we get more innovative in how to deal and manage with these variable soils, we're starting to look at grouping the soils together, our irrigation sets together, and according to like soil types or predominant soils. So here's an example on this land where the red areas represent the sandy, gravelly soils that have been identified, and they are recognized, and they are grouped, or the irrigation sets within them are grouped as best possible to try to manage for these coarse, gravelly soils. The blue represent the fine silt loam soils, deeper and higher water holding capacity, and the irrigation sets within these areas are grouped to, again, give flexibility to manage the water differently than from those in the red zones with the coarse, gravelly soils. And then the green represent soils that are in transition. They tend to be the layered soils, oftentimes the most difficult because the layers are more difficult with water infiltration and percolation. And they are distinguished, and the irrigation blocks are grouped, and efforts are attempted to manage for this unique soil condition. So this is a way that we can now start to kind of address the spatial soil variability. And in this instance, it's feasible to possibly monitor soil moisture in these different soil types, and then back up the soil moisture monitoring by performing the water budgets to see if they kind of agree and come together. Okay, this concludes this short tutorial. I hope it gives you a general idea of what a water budget is, and from a very high level, some of the applications of a water budget and how our weekly crop ET reports are part of it. Thank you.